All right, class. As we go through this Antigone background, I'd like for you to listen along and follow along as we go. I'm going to stop from time to time to kind of clarify and add to the story here. So sit back and relax and take in the background to Antigone. So the first thing you need to know is Antigone was the third play in a trilogy, the first being Oedipus Rex, Oedipus the King. The second was Oedipus at Colonus, and then the third is Antigone. And the audience, the Greek audience, already knew the background to the story. Okay, these are stories they'd heard their whole lives. It's similar to going to see a new movie version of Robin Hood or King Arthur or the 57th reboot of Spider-Man. We know what's going to happen. We just want to see how these guys do it. Okay, so the audience is expecting this story. They know what's going to happen. They're just going to enjoy the performance. So the story of Antigone. So the very beginning, the early background with Oedipus Rex begins with Laius, who was of the line of Cadmus, and he was king of Thebes. Okay, so Laius and his wife Jocasta long for an heir. They want a son so they can pass down the throne, right? So Laius went to the oracle of Apollo at Delphi for advice. The oracle told him that he would have a son, but that this son would cause Laius's death because Laius had once offended one of the gods. So the oracle, this fortune teller, tells Laius, yeah, you're going to have a son, but he's going to kill you. Okay. So when Jocasta finally has a son, Laius takes the baby, binds his feet, and orders a shepherd to take the infant to a mountain to be abandoned. Now, don't really know why he would bother binding his feet. It's a baby and he's leaving him in the wilderness, but maybe it just makes it easier for the animals to get to him. But so anyway, he sends this shepherd off with the baby and says, hey, leave this out in the woods. So instead, the shepherd, who pities the infant, he gives him to another shepherd he runs into. And he says, here, you want this kid? And the shepherd takes this baby. This fellow shepherd doesn't know who the boy is, doesn't know that it's the prince of Thebes, right? He unbinds the baby's feet and he calls him Oedipus, meaning swollen foot. So the kid's named Oedipus because his feet are swollen, right? So the rest of his life, he's called swollen foot. All right. So he then gives the baby to his master. Now, his master, this other shepherd's master, just happens to be the king of Corinth. Okay, so a neighboring country. So the king of Corinth raises Oedipus as he would have raised his own child. So never tells Oedipus that that he isn't his real son. Okay, so when Oedipus grows older, there's this jealous Corinthian who tells him that the king isn't really his dad. Right. So in his disbelief, Oedipus sets out to the oracle at Delphi to ask about his actual parents. Now, oracles are known for not giving straight answers, doesn't tell him the truth. The oracle instead tells Oedipus that he will slay his father and marry his mother. So the oracle just says, you're going to kill your dad and marry your mom. Now, thinking that the king and queen of Corinth are his parents, Oedipus, in fear of the oracle, vows not to return there. So he runs away because he loves his dad and marrying his mom is gross. So he decides to run away so that he can defy fate. All right. So on his journey away from Corinth, he meets an old man in a chariot. Okay, and the drivers of the chariot won't let Oedipus pass by, and Oedipus gets mad and lunges at the chariot, and it causes the old man to fall, and the old man dies from falling off the chariot. Now, unknown to Oedipus, this old man was Laius, his real dad, the king of Thebes. So that part of the prediction's true. All right, then Oedipus wanders on until he comes to the city of Thebes. Okay, and since King Laius's death, Thebes has been ruled by Creon, Jocasta's brother. So, so Laius dies. Jocasta's there, the queen, but she can't rule because she's a woman. So Creon, her brother, takes over. Not truly the rightful king, but he's just taking the place until there is a rightful king. Now, a terrible monster, a sphinx, is terrorizing the city. She would ask riddles and then kill anyone who answered them incorrectly. So Creon declares that whoever could rid the city of the monster would marry the queen, Jocasta, and rule the city. So you get rid of this monster, you get to marry the queen and be king. So Oedipus, who used to be a prince and now is just an average guy, thinks it might be nice to be king. He looks at Jocasta and says, she's a little older, but she's cute, so I'll go ahead and take up this challenge, right? So the so he agrees, and the Sphinx asks him this riddle: what goes on 4 feet in the morning, on 2 at noon, and on 3 in the evening? And Oedipus replies correctly that it is a man who crawls on 4 feet in early life, walks on 2 feet as an adult, and takes a staff for a third foot when he becomes old and weak. So the Sphinx, ashamed of her defeat, throws herself from a cliff and perishes. Okay. Consequently, Oedipus won the rule of Thebes and married the queen, his mother. Okay. Neither of them knew who the other really was. And so for many years, they rule in peace and love. And in time, they have 4 children. I'll just let that sink in there. All right. So they have 4 children, twin boys, Eteocles and Polynices, and 2 daughters, Antigone and Ismene. All right. Then a plague came to Thebes, and Oedipus consults the oracle for a cure. Now, the relief it told him was to find the person who murdered Laius. Okay. Oedipus calls the blind seer Tiresias to help him. So a seer is a fortune teller. They can see the future. Sorry. Um, and and Tiresias tells him that he, Oedipus, killed Laius, his father, and married his own mother. Now, Oedipus refuses to believe Tiresias, and this happens a lot. People ask Tiresias to tell them the future, and then they refuse to believe it. So Oedipus refuses to believe Tiresias, and the shepherd who had been given the duty of abandoning the infant, Oedipus, told of his giving the infant to the shepherd of the king of Corinth. So the original shepherd comes back and says, yeah, I think you really are the one. Upon hearing the truth, Jocasta realizes that her son killed her husband, and then she married her son and had 4 kids with him. So she just can't handle that, and she hangs herself. And then Oedipus is so upset finding out what he'd done, he cannot stand to see the world. He cannot stand to look at himself and see the reactions that other people have towards him. So he takes 2 brooches, these big pins that they use to hold their togas together, right? Takes these 2 brooches and gouges his eyes out in despair. Now, Oedipus's sons, Eteocles and Polynices, are so ashamed of what their father had done, they treat him badly. According to some accounts, they give him a slave's portion of a sacrificial victim. According to others, they shut him away. And because of their disdainful treatment, Oedipus lays a curse on them, that they should divide their inheritance by the sword. So he curses his sons. And then when he dies, the rule of Thebes falls to his 2 sons. Now they're twins, so they can't really decide who's going to rule, so they agree to rule in alternate years, with Eteocles the older being the first to rule. Okay, so Eteocles takes over as king, promising to hand over the rule to his brother a year later. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have an older brother, and we shared a room, and we totally always shared, and everything worked out great. Yeah, it doesn't. So Eteocles, a year later, when his year ends, refuses to give the throne to his brother Polynices because he says Polynices has a violent character. Now, Polynices says, I don't have a violent character. I'm going to kill you. Okay, so Polynices is banished and he flees to Argos, where he enlists the aid of 7 chiefs, and he comes back with this army of 7 chiefs to storm the 7 gates of Thebes. And then when he gets there, Polynices comes out with his army, Eteocles comes out with his army, and the armies look at each other and realize they are the exact same size. It's going to be a bloodbath, And in the end, too many people will die to actually protect Thebes afterwards. So they would leave it unprotected for somebody else to come in and take over. So the brothers know this will doom Thebes if they have this battle. So instead, they agree to fight each other for the throne while the other armies, the two armies, watch. And so Edicles and Polynices take out their swords and they start fighting. But the problem with sword fights is you can stab somebody with a mortal wound, one that's going to kill them, but they can live long enough to kill you back. And that's exactly what happens with Edicles and Polynices. They kill each other in battle. And now the kingdom is left without anyone to rule. Now, Creon, who's the uncle of the two, he takes over again, not the rightful king. He hasn't earned it or it hasn't been passed down to him, but there's really nobody else there to be in charge. So Creon takes over. And that's where Antigone is going to begin. Okay, so there might be some confusion with this because it's a crazy story. But if you take a look at the second page here, you do get the family tree of this. And as we read Antigone, we're going to get a little bit more information. But as you're paying, take a look. This is like the craziest family tree you've ever seen, right? So the rest of this document goes through some pronunciations. We're just going to do our best and not worry about it too much. But that is our background on Antigone, the play itself. So what happened up until the point of the play? The moment where Creon takes over, that's where Antigone begins.